Hey friend, it's Patricia here. We are about to get started with today's episode, but first, if you want to land a position that is a perfect fit at a great company, making good money, even if you don't have a fancy title or a big network or a ton of experience, then head over into the description and grab the Career Transition Checklist. This is basically a checklist that includes all 7 phases of a successful career search, many of which people miss altogether all the time. So grab that in the description. Know that I'm cheering you on all the way through. And now let's get into today's episode. Hey friend, let's talk about your amazing God-given brand and the mindset you need to stand out in a crowded job market. Whether you want to launch, pivot, or move up in your career, we're going to tackle this together. Meet up with me each week to help you get confident, get noticed, and get hired. I'm Patricia Ortega, and this is the Uncommon Career Podcast. Hey friend, welcome back. Have you been laid off, or do you know someone who's been laid off? Then this is the right episode for you. And I would really encourage you to head into the description and grab the layoff guide because it provides everything that I'm talking about today, and it gives you some space to do a little bit of reflection and take some action. Now, if you've just been laid off, then you probably are feeling some sort of overwhelm. Maybe you're unsure on what to do next. It just all happened so quickly. But you might also be stuck in a storm of emotion, which keeps you from seeing things clearly. There are so many things that could be happening when someone goes to you and pulls you in a room and essentially tells you that you no longer have your source of income and you no longer have that workplace community that you once had. Maybe you've been building a career at this particular place and all of a sudden it got pulled from under you. It's a really difficult time, and it's very easy for us to be harsh on ourselves, to maybe even feel some insecurity or even shame ourselves like this was somehow our fault. In this episode, I really want to talk to you about, what are the 3 phases that we go through in order to come back from a layoff successfully. And we're also going to talk about things like the emotions. We're going to talk about things like the reflection that is needed in order to get into a good position. And then also, what are the specific things we need to do first? What should we do second? What should we do third? Because this is a time of overwhelm, I'm going to try to make it as simple and absorbable as possible because I know what it's like to have, in some ways, your life kind of pulled from under you. Okay, before we get into all of that though, let's talk about why layoffs actually happen. Oftentimes, we think of a layoff as being our fault, as something's wrong with me. Now, we may not say that, right? Sometimes I will give myself this justification and I'll say things like, well, it was the company and this is what happened. And it's true. It is on the part of the company. 99.9% of layoffs have to do with the company. However, internally, I sometimes will just kind of absorb the situation and place the blame on myself, even if that's not what I'm saying. So I encourage you to do some self-reflection to make sure that's not happening. Now, to help with that, here is the reason why layoff happens. The reasons why layoffs happen. First, layoffs happen because of bad planning or budgeting decisions. Layoffs can also happen because of overwhelming and unexpected events that happen in the market. Sometimes the best of planning really can't make up for the fact that a certain product is no longer viable or that maybe a particular market is about to crash. There are some unavoidable circumstances in there, but more often than not, bad planning and bad budgeting or kind of not paying attention to the threats that are coming up for the particular market that company is in, that is the reason for most layoffs. And so while as employees, we're feeling like it's our fault, like if we had done more or whatever the case might be, if we were, had done XYZ, then we'd be more valuable to the company. At the end of the day, that thinking really places all of the responsibility of most of the time multi-million-dollar companies, right? And people that are making decisions at much higher levels, it's placing all of that responsibility on us as the candidate, as the person who's being laid off. And I just don't think that's true. So you might have that idea of like, why me? Why did I get chosen? And it's less about you being chosen as an employee, but more so about you being affected by a bad decision or by an unforeseen circumstance. And oftentimes, who gets laid off has more to do with the projects that that particular person was on. Maybe they are costly projects, but are bringing in less benefit financially. In either case, you did not create your project. You did not assign yourself your project. The leadership did. And even if you did choose your project, you are not the person who has the foresight, right? The 50,000 foot view to be able to see what is coming your way and what is not. So this layoff is more likely than not a reflection of you in any way. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about something called the Kubler-Ross change curve. So this is basically the process that most humans go through when they experience any kind of change. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a negative change. It's just a change. So it's going to be, you can go through this process when you move from one state to another, or when someone passes away, or when you lose a job. Any change in your life can move you into this process of the Kubler-Ross change curve. So let's talk about it. This is basically phase 1, by the way. So as you experience the layoff, you're going to go through some emotions, and some people are going to fly right by some of these stages in the Kubler-Ross change curve, and some folks are going to actually sit in each individual stage, and so it's different for everyone. So think about your own experience as we talk about this. Now, the first phase in the Kubler-Ross change curve is shock. This is basically going to be the time when you're like, what in the world just happened to me? Maybe you're also in the second section, the second phase, which is denial. If you are so shocked that you wake up still expecting to go to work, there's a piece of us that stays in our old life until we sort of accept what's happening. And denial, and even denial that's not outward, but maybe that idea of, I got up this morning, I started getting ready, and I got into my car, and then I finally kind of realized or decided, hey, you don't have anywhere to go today. This is part of the change curve. This is part of the process that all of us as humans go through. And so if you got up this morning, if you're getting ready, you're about to go to work, and then you kind of decide and realize, there's nothing to go to today. That is perfectly normal. So first is the shock of what in the world just happened to me. Then there's the denial of, did I really lose my job? Like, did my job really lay me off? After that, once you accept the fact that, hey, I really don't have a job right now, it opens up your mind for the next stage of this Kubler-Ross change curve, and that is anger, to finally unleash the feelings and the emotions that are going on. And again, some people go straight into anger. Like if you are that person who got called into the office and you were told that you are now laid off and you have this immediate angry response, that is also to be expected. I mean, that is normal. Of course, we want to, as much as possible, right, have appropriate actions at the workplace and, but the fact that you are angry is a normal response. And so whether that happens immediately after getting laid off, or if it's in the next day, 2 days, 3 days, that anger is part of us as humans, and it's a normal thing to go through. So give yourself some time to be angry, to be like, what in the world just happened? And why didn't they make better decisions? And why are they choosing these departments, et cetera, et cetera? Like, go through that process. Now, the lowest point, up until this point, we start with sort of like high adrenaline, right? The shock, the denial, the anger. But then you start to come down and you go into depression. Now, this isn't clinical depression necessarily. This is more of this low time where you're just thinking things like, well, what in the world do I do now? You might feel a bit of, low level frustration, hopelessness, maybe some anxiety in there, just kind of wondering like, well, forget it. Why should I focus so much on finding another job if the market's so low right now? Do I even have options? Right? All of that negative thinking is going to take place at that depression stage of the change curve. And it's important to know that that is okay too. You want to give yourself some time to go through these phases so that you don't rush yourself through. Because if you rush yourself through these phases and sort of push these emotions down, they're actually going to come with you into your next interview, into your next networking conversation. And, whatever's in your heart, my friend, is going to come out to your mouth. Like you are going to have a comment or a reaction or a response or some behavior is going to come out. We just cannot hide how we really feel. And so you want to kind of give yourself time to experience every piece of the emotion here. Okay, let's say you're in that low stage, right? They call it depression, but it's really just like it's a low stage. After you get out of that stage, then you start to come up on the mood curve. So now you're coming back up and you might have some hope, a little spark, and you might say, okay, this is a time for experimentation. That is the next part of the change curve. So you went from your moment of this is absolutely hopeless, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore, I don't even like this, to, hey, well, let's see if this might be an opportunity. Let's look and see what's out there. You get curious, start doing some research. This is the experimentation phase. From there, then you go into a decision phase, and that essentially is when you decide and accept this is now my life. And in most cases, this can be a positive acceptance where you say, this is my life. I'm going to use this as an opportunity. Let's move forward, right? And so the experimentation phase, you're just kind of thinking about it and you're reflecting and you're opening up your world to the possibility that this could be a good thing. And at the decision phase, you have decided this is a good thing or this is something I can work with. So I'm going to move forward. I am deciding to move forward. And the very last stage of this Kubler-Ross change curve is integration. This is where you integrate this new part of your life. In some cases, it could be this new position, but in others, you likely are in this phase of your life where you're looking for a job still. But now you're integrating this with the rest of your identity, with the rest of who you are. And you're saying, this is just a normal part of my life right now. I happen to be searching for a job, but that's okay. And now there's nothing left to process because you've processed it. You feel good and you're moving forward. Now, during these times, you want to ask yourself a few questions. And I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself. The first question is, in what ways can you give yourself space to feel the emotions and to actually grieve what you've lost? You can do this with maybe some time in solitude or in nature. You can, take a bath and just shut out the world. You can have a conversation with a friend or write a letter. And having that conversation with a friend tends to be kind of more important for those who are more extroverted, and those who are more introverted, like the bath and going out in nature and being on your own. But you want to give yourself space to feel the emotions and grieve. Now, the second question you want to ask yourself is, what are some positive thoughts that I can focus on? And we have to be really intentional about finding those positive thoughts in these moments that can be really difficult. So you might write down a positive thought that you can focus on, such as, this is a new opportunity. This is my chance for upward movement or for a salary increase. This is an opportunity for me to rest that I've needed in a long time. Or maybe it's something like, hey, I no longer have to deal with so-and-so, right? Whatever it is that is a positive thought for you, something good that maybe came out of this negative situation, that's what you want to jot down. And the third question is that it's okay to stay in the feels for a bit, to really feel all those negative emotions, but what might be a good time frame to start the next phase of the process? Okay, so give yourself some time to feel everything and decide for yourself, what is a good amount of time that I want to stay in these emotions. Now we're going to move on to phase 2. Phase 2 is to start thinking about your next position. Now, you don't have to take action yet. I think many times we jump right into action too quickly, and then we actually do not have what we need in order to have those actions and those, behaviors be successful. In this phase 2, this is where you are going to think through everything. And you want to ask yourself questions like, what do I do now? What do I want? What am I good at? And what do I like? Now, a good way of doing this is to list your prior positions and then answer very simple questions about them. Now, you list all your positions and you ask yourself, what did I enjoy from each specific role? What did I dread? What did I not like doing in each particular role? And then what was I best at? What came to me so naturally in each role? And so now that you have that piece drawn out, right? The handout gives you some space to organize that. But regardless whether you do it with the handout or with just a blank piece of paper, once you have those things written out, then you want to step back a little bit and start doing some circling, some crossing out, some highlighting, and really start to figure out what bubbles up to the surface. What are the activities, the tasks, the duties, the projects, the environments that you loved, that you really didn't love, and the ones that you were naturally good at? And you might start to see some patterns between your positions. More often than not, it's patterns that we don't even realize we have until we do this activity, until we step back and say, hey, I am always the go-to person for XYZ. I'm always the person who helps to blank. And so you want to find that with this think phase, this phase of reflection. At the same time, you also want to think not only about what you would want the next phase of your career to look like, but also what you need it to be. So in the first phase, when you look at what you want your career to look like, you're going to take the favorite, the dreaded, and the best at situations. And then you're going to identify what are some positions that encompass all of these different facets. Do I want to stay in my field? Or do I want to make a short pivot to a related industry? Or do I want to completely just do an overhaul, do this, career makeover and go into a completely new area? Remember that you have transferable skills that can go into lots of different industries. It is not just in your particular industry where you can use your skills. Now, some career changes are going to take more schooling or certificates, or, you might have some gaps and might need to take a little bit of a pay cut. And so think about those things. But that brings me to the last thing that you want to think about. Determine your financial runway. Maybe even consider if gig work or freelance work or contract work, part-time job, if any of those might give you time to find the right job instead of finding just the first job. And this is so important because when you get laid off, your self-confidence kind of takes a hit. And so you might think, I just need to find something. But if you have a little bit of a runway, you can fill the gaps in with gig work, part-time, freelance, etc., to really find a position full-time and long-term that you love so that this negative situation can actually be a catapult into a great career. Okay, so now let's say you're already done with the feeling of it all, kind of going through those negative emotions. You're also, experimenting with what options are available for you. You're going through this thinking process of reflecting and finding what you like about your position and how you might build yourself a financial runway into a career that you enjoy. The end of this portion the end of this phase is to summarize so that you can get more clarity around what you want. What are some possible positions that might be open that you might be interested in? So start to gain clarity around what direction you want to go into now that you've had a chance to think about what is going to be a good fit for you and what type of financial runway you need. The next phase is the act phase. This is where you get to put everything together again. You start to get clarity, you start to prepare your materials, and you start to gain momentum. In this action phase, this is the place where most people get stuck if you haven't done the prior two phases of actually feeling the emotions and letting them come and go so that then you can take time to reflect and have a clear head as you go into this act phase. Now, there's 3 steps to this act phase. The first step is to get clarity. You're going to find 3 sample descriptions for each position that you're interested in. So let's say, for example, in that second phase, when you are reflecting and summarizing what you liked about your current position, let's say you enjoyed a marketing position, or you came up with the fact that you enjoyed tasks and projects and duties related to a marketing position, maybe a management position in a more administrative department, and then maybe you enjoyed being some sort of community leader. Well, now you're going to find 2 to 3 sample descriptions for each of those 3 positions. You're going to end up with like 8 to 9 sample descriptions. You're not necessarily having to look through all of them at the same time. If you look through all of them at the same time, it's going to feel kind of overwhelming. So what I personally like to do is to print the sample job descriptions, staple or whatever, put them somewhere where I can come back to them and then just little by little start reviewing them, highlighting what I like, what I don't like, etc. And then you can start to get clarity around your positions. This is one quick way to do this on your own, but there's also ways that when you work with a career coach, we're able to use assessments and talk through, use coaching and questioning techniques to get the clarity a little bit faster and without having to read, so many descriptions. But nevertheless, you're going to find those job descriptions, get a little bit of clarity around that. Now you're going to start to list potential companies that you might want to work at based on those job descriptions. You'll also want to seek out 2 to 3 informational interviews from professionals in your field of interest. This is especially important if you're going to make a pivot. If you're interested in a new industry or maybe a different sector of your current industry, if there's any kind of a knowledge gap or a learning curve, or you need to gain more folks in your network with relation to that position or those types of companies, this is where the informational interviews will make a big difference. Now, as you're going through these steps, then you want to eventually get to a place that is clear enough where you can confirm the one position you are targeting. Now, I don't mean one position at one company. I mean one position, right? So if you had the marketing, the management, and maybe a community leader type of position, and you decided for the marketing position, you want to confirm that position. So which marketing position is it? To where you can find several titles or several job descriptions by the same title so that now you can get really clear on which position you're targeting, what keywords are necessary for that position, what qualifications are typically required, typically recommended, and just keep in mind that just because it says recommended, desired, required doesn't always mean it's actually required in order for you to get the job. So that is all part of step 1, which is getting clarity. You start with several job descriptions for each position of interest. You review those, create a list of potential companies just to kind of keep on the side, maybe do some informational interviews. And over time, you want to confirm the position you are targeting. And this is one position that has essentially it doesn't have to be the exact same title, but it does need to be the same position so that even if 2 different companies call the same position something slightly different, in essence, the duties, the task responsibilities, the qualifications, requirements, etc., are all the same. And this is because once you get clarity on your target position, then you can hop into step 2. Step 2 is where you prepare your materials. This is where you create a career story specifically around that desired target position. We all have great career stories, but when you're looking at it from the perspective of a hiring manager or a committee who's going to make a decision on whether or not you're the right fit for their position, your career story or the entirety of it is not actually what they're looking for. What they're looking for is a career story that speaks to them as sort of the ending of that story. So think about this as a way to create a career story that reflects your experience in terms of how you arrived at their interview table. Okay, so you're going to create your career story around that desired position, which means it's going to have different terminology, different stories, maybe a different timeline. You're going to focus on different positions based on what is most relevant to that desired position. And then you're going to revise and target your resume to fit that target position's job descriptions. This is where you might use ChatGPT to help create some bullets that include your experience, but in terms of their keywords. You also want to revise and target your LinkedIn, but make sure and do your resume first because that is the cornerstone of everything. So you start with your career story, then you do your resume, and then you pull from your resume the most impactful and summative, more like comprehensive bullets to put into your LinkedIn because you don't want all your resume bullets on your LinkedIn. That is far too overwhelming, and if it is a exact duplicate of your resume, it actually loses I don't want to say credibility. It just looks like a copy paste, and that doesn't really present well. So you do want to target your LinkedIn to show them that you know LinkedIn is different. It is a online profile and it requires a different strategy than a resume. All right, so create your career story, revise your resume for your target position, revise your LinkedIn for your target position, and also curate your account for networking. And what I mean by this is change some settings, unfollow companies, follow companies, connect with recruiters, etc. So you want to take the actions that are going to make your LinkedIn profile sort of a runway where as you are on LinkedIn, it speeds up your hiring process. You want your LinkedIn account to be a space that as soon as you log on, you're able to see the companies, the positions, the recruiters, the managers of the, title and target job description. And you do that by doing a couple different things. Number one, you want to put on your open to work. Now, you don't have to share it with the whole world. You can choose to show only recruiters that open to work signifier without having that badge on your profile. Now, the second thing you would do is go through your list of companies that you follow, the company and organizations that you follow, and make sure that if you're taking a career pivot, that you follow the right companies that you are interested in now. And if you need to unfollow some companies, that's fine too. You're just kind of cleaning things up. Then you're going to go through those companies, and in the company page, you can actually see it says people. So you can see who's working there. So you're going to click on people, and then you can search it, which is so helpful. You can search for people that attended the same institution, or you can search for a particular title like, hiring manager, recruiter, or maybe someone with a title that is the same as a position that you want. So now you can start connecting with people and getting those informational interviews going. All right, so this is step 2, preparing your materials. You're going to prepare your career story, your targeted resume, your targeted LinkedIn, and then of course, curate your account so that your networking is much, much easier. Okay, my friend, so you've gotten clarity, you prepared your materials. Now it's time to gain momentum. You've already followed companies of interest. You've already connected with recruiters and managers and employers, but now you want to start those networking meetings. You want to start also at the same time preparing for interviews. So in these networking meetings, you are having these interactions with folks that are at companies and in positions that you're interested in or who have influence on those hiring decisions. And so your interpersonal communications now needs to take a step up. As you're going through these networking meetings, you're also preparing for interviews. You're just getting into the mindset of having conversations around this position, this industry, these types of companies. So make sure and prepare for your interviews almost at the same time. You may not have fully started applying to a ton of positions. You may not have an interview lined up, but that's okay because it takes time to build up this interview presence and confidence and the knowledge base, that you can internalize so that when they ask you questions at an interview, you are ready and prepared and not from a place of having briefly memorized the responses, but more from a place of just being comfortable talking about these things. So this is essentially the entire process. So let me summarize it for you really, really quickly here. If you've been laid off, you want to give yourself time to go through the first phase, which is to feel every emotion that comes with such a loss. It's different for everyone, but give yourself some of that time. Then go into the second phase where you start to reflect, start to think on what your prior positions were, what you loved, what you dreaded, what you were best at, and then gain clarity by reviewing your information, highlighting, circling, whatever you need, and start to gain clarity around what you want to do in the future. And then from there, you'll go into Phase 3, which is the action phase. That's where you want to take maybe a week to get really clear on your next position and confirm that one position you're targeting. Spend maybe a week on preparing your materials. So creating your career story, your resume, your LinkedIn, and curating your account. Spend the rest of your time gaining momentum. This is having networking meetings, connecting with recruiters, making yourself visible. Of course, there's the application process in there as you find positions that you enjoy, start applying for those positions, but at the same time, start preparing for interviews. You don't want to wait until you actually have an interview in, 2 days to start preparing for the interview. So do what you can in these processes. If you want to grab the layoff guide, then go ahead and head into the description because I put something together for you so that this is organized, easy to get to, it's fillable. And then if you need any help with any part of this process, whether it's getting career clarity, whether it's having your materials created with you or for you, meaning your resume, your LinkedIn, or whether you need to prepare for those interviews and have some mock interviews, you want some coaching to make sure that you are confident in that process, then there's some links there for you too. But no matter what, just know that it is not your fault 99.9% of the time. It is not the employee's fault that there was a layoff. It was actually a decision or a mistake or an unforeseen circumstance at a much, much higher level. That's all I have for you today. Know that even in these difficult moments, I know that you can pull through. I'm cheering you on. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you on the next one. It's me again. Thank you for listening. You're now done with the very first step in becoming a part of the Uncommon Career community, and that was to listen to this podcast. So, woohoo! Congratulations, you are done. Your next step is to head over to theuncommoncareer.com or to click on the link in the description to get your career resources that are going to help you make career progress right now. So again, before you forget, head over to theuncommoncareer.com or just click the link in the description, grab your resources, and I'll see you there.